Mic check, mic check. Mic check. Can you push it on?
All right.
Greg, I want to say hello. I'm Bill Offit. I'm with
Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. The subcommittee will come to order. I want to thank you all for joining us here today for our hearing entitled Examining 21st Century Programs and Strategies for Veteran Job Seekers. I'm excited for today's hearing, which is designed to be a continuation of discussion we had at the subcommittee hearing last month, where we examined how we can help veterans find careers in the tech industry. But today we'll focus more on the general veteran job seeker and how we can work together in a more holistic approach to connect them to meaningful careers across the economy. As I mentioned last month, the unemployment rates among veterans continue to decline or remain stagnant. But seeing as there is still an unemployment rate and lower workforce participation rate for our nation's veterans of all generations, it's clear that more work still needs to be done. One issue that we have heard from transitioning service members and veteran job seekers in the past is that they throw themselves into the job search. They find that the process is often daunting, and finding a sustainable and meaningful job is, in fact, a job in and of itself. So I know that this is the case among all Americans as they try and enter the workforce after college or at certain time in their lives, but veterans often face a greater uphill battle when searching for a job in the civilian sector than what their civilian counterparts face. Often, due to the many avenues and platforms currently available in the job searching space, they're unsure where to even start the process of finding the best job for both themselves and their families. We've also heard concerns that veterans and transitioning service members are often unsure as to how to facilitate the connections and networks they built during their military service to help them find a job outside the military. And lastly, one of the largest issues we continue to hear is that veterans are not always aware of how advantageous their military careers and skills can look on a resume for a civilian sector job. We need to help veterans articulate and advertise these skills in a way to prove that they are a competitive candidate for the job. So great strides have been made over the past several years to help the men and women who have worn the uniform to bridge this gap between their military experience and translatable skills for civilian jobs, but more work needs to be done at the federal, state, and local levels to build this bridge in a more meaningful way, while also ensuring that employers in the private and public sectors understand the advantages of hiring veterans. Further, while the unemployment rates have declined, the rate did increase over the past month for female veterans overall, and for post-9/11 males, which is a trend that is not new. And while it's unreasonable to believe that the unemployment rate will completely drop to zero overnight, we need to examine why women veterans have an overall higher unemployment rate than their male counterparts, and what we can do to work with groups like those testifying before us today to continue to work at chipping away at the unemployment rates for all of those who have served. As we've said in the past, it's also important that we discuss how employers can better recruit service members for jobs earlier on in their transition to lessen the likelihood of a lapse in employment and a steady income as they leave the military. The best way to beat unemployment is to ensure that there's not even the briefest of windows for it to occur in the first place. I hope that with the expertise of the witnesses before us today, we can have a meaningful conversation about how to address these concerns. The continued overall unemployment rates for veterans and feedback we have heard over the years from veterans and other stakeholders to improve the overall experience and outcomes for veteran job seekers. I will now yield to my colleague, Ranking Member Takano, for any opening statement he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today to talk about veteran employment in our contemporary economy. Veteran unemployment is at a historic low at 3.4% overall, down from 5% this time last year, and down from a high of 9.9% just 5 years ago. Veteran unemployment has remained lower than or just about equal to the national average for 24 months. This excellent news is thanks to the combined efforts of the administration, this committee, public and private sector employers, nonprofit advocates, and of course, thanks to the hard work and determination of veterans themselves. And while we've made significant progress, we all need to do more to make sure that every veteran job seeker is able to find work that pays well and is aligned with that veteran's strengths. This is particularly the case for women veterans and younger veterans, as we will hear today. As the fastest growing military cohort, women veterans face a persistently higher rate of unemployment than men, although the reasons for this difference are not fully understood. Given that approximately 200,000 women are expected to leave the military over the next 5 years, it is imperative that we identify and implement a strategy to better support women veterans in their effort to find employment. Post-9/11 veterans under the age of 25 also face an unemployment rate that is higher than the national average. A variety of factors contribute to this problem. Our subcommittee members on both sides of the aisle want to listen and discuss ways to improve outcomes for younger veterans. We also know that military spouses continue to face difficulties in finding the right job and keeping it when they have to move. I would appreciate your recommendations to address this challenge and improve employment outcomes for military spouses. As our military prepares for a significant drawdown in the coming years, it is critically important that we have in place employment programs and services that effectively help transitioning service members find satisfying and stable civilian jobs. I'm looking forward to listening to our witnesses' testimony regarding their efforts in this matter, as well as their thoughts on how the federal government can help improve job outcomes for all veterans. I want to thank each of these witnesses for their commitment to connecting transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses with high-quality civilian jobs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Takano. I now want to recognize our first and only panel of witnesses today. With us today, we have the Honorable Michael Michaud, Assistant Secretary for the Veteran Employment and Training Service for the U.S. Department of Labor, Mr. Eric Eversole, Senior Advisor and President for Hiring Our Heroes at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, Mr. Terry Howell, Senior Director for Military.com, Mr. Leroy Acosta, Assistant National Legislative Director for the Disabled American Veterans, and Mr. Greg Call, Head of LinkedIn's Veterans Program. Assistant Secretary Michaud, it's great to have you back with us again. Let's begin with you. You are now recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ranking member, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm very excited to be here this afternoon to tell you what we're doing at the Department of Labor. I appreciate the opportunity to report on the Department of Labor's efforts to provide better services that led to improved employment outcome for our nation's veterans. Through the collective and sustained efforts and partnerships with many public-private organizations, the employment situation for veterans continues to improve and veterans' unemployment rates are trending down. The unemployment rate for veterans has fallen from a high of 9.9% in January 2011 to 3.4% in May of 2016. It remains lower than the non-veterans' unemployment rate of 4.4% in May of 2016. The charts displayed before you show that this considerable improvement also applies to veterans aged 18 to 24 and to the female veterans. While the overall veterans' unemployment rate continues to trend lower, we at the Department of Labor will not rest as long as any veteran needs assistance finding meaningful civilian employment. To that end, VETS has pursued 6 integrated lines of effort. First, we engaged our service members before they're transitioning into civilian life. We continue to improve the Department of Labor's employment workshop as part of TAP to ensure it remains relevant to the needs of transitioning service members. We have expanded the ability of service members at risk of successful transition to meet with DVOPs and are working closely with DOD to connect them with the American Job Centers before they leave active duty. We are actively connecting our employer network to DOD through its Skill Bridge program that allows service members meeting certain qualifications to participate in civilian jobs and employment training in their last 180 days of active duty. VETS is also engaged with employer support of the Guard and Reserve, ESGR, programs to assist reserve service members when connecting to their local American Job Centers so that they can obtain local employment while still retaining the ability to support the mission of their assigned units. Second, we are providing a lifetime of employment support for our veterans, for all veterans, regardless of where they served. Veterans Job for Veterans State Grants support veterans-focused staff in a public workforce system in all 50 states and 4 territories throughout American Job Centers and local communities. We've improved our intensive service rates to nearly 90% nationwide to ensure that our veterans receive the help they need to connect to the civilian workforce, and I'm pleased to report that the employment retention rate for JVSG participants has increased to 82%. Third, we're engaging and mobilizing communities to establish collective partnerships to better support our veterans where they live. VETS is working with a variety of national-based constituencies, including the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, the National Governors Association, and the National Conference of State Legislators, to address local employment obstacles like the unique requirements to obtain professional licenses and credentials. We are also partnering with the VA in their My VA Community Initiative to encourage community-driven solutions for veterans and to ensure that the public workforce provides the employment foundation for these communities. Fourth, we continue to work to end homelessness among our veterans by providing services that help them establish a stable long-term employment. And I'm happy to note that the President supported our request for an additional $12 million in fiscal year 2017 to fully fund our homeless veterans reintegration program in recognition of its measurable impact. Beginning in July, we'll require our grantees serving homeless veterans to co-enroll participants in the public workforce system through their local American Job Centers. And we are working with faith-based organizations to further expand the resources available to these important but vulnerable population. Fifth, we are addressing the skill gaps between veterans and employers who are seeking employees with industry-recognized credentials and helping veterans receive occupational, classroom, and on-the-job training. On June 1st, we published the results of a 2-year study with the National Governors Association on steps states can take to accelerate professional licensing and industrial credentials for veterans. We continue to work with DOL's Office of Apprenticeship to encourage companies to establish registered apprenticeships that can help veterans earn while they learn in new careers. And six, we have dramatically expanded employer outreach to make it easier for companies to find and hire veterans by leveraging federal, state, and local resources. VET's Office of Strategic Outreach, fully manned just a year ago, is now working with nearly 600 companies across the country on active veterans hiring campaigns. This team provides valuable bridges between the national and regional employers who are eager to hire veterans and the workforce development staff at the AJCs, who build local employment relationships and assist veterans in finding meaningful employment in their communities. We also rolled out our Veterans.gov website May 1st. Veterans.gov was built in response to the veterans and employers' feedback that it is a critical resource that will help connect veterans to civilian employment and help connect employers to job-seeking veterans through the public workforce system. VETS is committed to reducing veterans' unemployment nationally by helping each veteran through individual services. And by bringing together our partners for this important mission, VETS is leading the way in helping our veterans find meaningful civilian employment today and tomorrow. So, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Takano, members of the committee, thanks again for inviting me here today. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Eversole, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Takano. My name is Eric Eversole. I'm the president of Hiring Our Heroes, a member of our program of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and we are honored to be here to testify about the tremendous value that veterans and military spouses bring to our workforces across America. I think before we really start talking about the examining 21st century programs and strategies for veteran job seekers, I think it's also important to talk for just a couple of minutes about the tremendous progress that has been made in this space. And there has been, as both the ranking member and the chairman noted in their opening comments, there has been tremendous work done in this space, and that work should help guide us as to what we need to do to continue to serve the veterans and military spouses that are continuing to struggle, because there are segments of that veteran and military spouse population that are struggling. They haven't found the opportunities they have desired, and that's created some real challenges both in the near term and the long term to ensure that those young men and women who've raised their hand are delivered the promise of better economic opportunities once they have ended their military service. One of the things that we have learned from really the outset of our efforts from a program perspective, we've hosted more than 1,000 hiring events in the last 5 years. And we've done that in every state in the country, the territories, overseas locations, and really pretty much anywhere where we can find a veteran or a military spouse who's struggling. And the one thing we've learned from day one of our efforts is that it's a community effort. It's an effort of both, it's a collaboration between both the private sector and the public sector, between nonprofits and companies, to help ensure that we're making meaningful connections to those young men and women who are looking for those opportunities. There's no magic bullet in this space. It takes a community effort, and it's the collective efforts of those organizations and groups like Department of Labor vets and the federal agencies, as well as the state and local agencies, nonprofits, that are really going to make a difference in this space, and that's where we've seen the most success. The other thing that we've really learned is that you have to avoid taking the field of dreams approach to helping veterans and military spouses find meaningful employment opportunities. You can create great job opportunities with lots of pay, but there are a lot of young men and women who don't understand fully what real economic opportunity looks like in this country. They come from those low and middle income families, like my family is a first-generation college student from the Midwest, who really have one of two options back in your hometown. If you want a better life, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to join the military, or you're going to go to college. But a lot of these young men and women, after that 4 years or 6 years or 8 years of military service, still don't know what that economic opportunity looks like. They still need that extra hand to find that meaningful opportunity because they know what service is, they know what commitment is, they know what hard work looks like, but they don't necessarily have the connections or the backgrounds that's going to help them take that tremendous experience and then sell it to the civilian sector. And that really leads to my third point, which I think is equally critical. Digital programs play an incredibly important role in this space because they have the ability to connect service members and military spouses with great employers at a moment's notice, regardless of where they're stationed in this world. We have, at Hiring Our Heroes, we've created a number of digital programs like our Virtual Job Scout, our Resume Engine, our Career Spark for military spouses that helps to make those meaningful connections. And we've seen tremendous success to be able to reach people, whether they're in Germany and looking for a job in the United States, or they're located in California and they're looking for a job in Northern California. Regardless, we can make those connections, but you still have to have a ground game. You still have to have people that are involved that are going to help those young men and women who don't know what they don't know to take that next meaningful step. We have found our programs to be most effective when we integrate them with the on-the-ground approach, and we've seen good success. With that said, I'll yield the remaining amount of my time and look forward to the panel's questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coffey. For 5 minutes.
Actually, Mr. Howell.
I'm sorry, Mr. Howell is next.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Winstrup and Ranking Member Takano and the board or the other members of the subcommittee for inviting us here today to talk about this important subject. My name is Terry Howell, and I am the Senior Director for Editorial Operations and Strategic Alliances for Military.com. I joined Military.com in 2003 after serving in the Coast Guard for 20 years. In 1999, Military.com was founded with the premise and the purpose of connecting service members, veterans, and their families with the benefits of service. Those benefits include not just the federal and state benefits, but discounts, scholarships, and other opportunities that come with having served their countries. Since we're founded, we've grown to over 10 million members, and we have 7 million unique visitors a month. In 2004, we joined forces with Monster Worldwide, and in doing so, we were able to team up together to take on quite a few projects for the government. We've worked on transition and employment programs and online tools for the Department of Defense, the Veteran Affairs, private corporations, and state agencies. Over the years, we've developed several online tools to help connect employers and veterans and aid in the transition process. Our most widely used tool is our military skills translator. As I referred to earlier, technology is a big part of it, though it's not the only answer. We are very proud of the fact that we've created a skills translator that's being currently used by over 60 different companies. We share it at no cost with nonprofit organizations like the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And we also provide it for organizations like the Northern Virginia Technology Council, who use it teamed up with junior colleges in their area and other means to help provide opportunities for veterans to find jobs within the techno and the high-tech fields. Our translator is, we recently made significant changes to improve people's awareness of what we're doing in these areas. We've created new tools to help people apply for jobs online or at the desktop, whereas before it was kind of a complicated process. We've simplified these processes to make it simpler and easier for veterans to apply for jobs. We've also added a new skills correction. We will be launching a new transition app, which essentially takes the TAP process and puts it in a mobile device, giving them personalized checklists and reminders and notifications through their device of when they need to reach certain milestones, certain accomplishments they have to hit before they're ready to transition. And we're very proud of that tool. We'll be launching hopefully in the next few weeks. Let's see, we also each year create the Veteran Talent Index. This is an annual report that kind of gives us a snapshot of what not only the BLS data, but also surveys of what employers and service members and veterans have to say about the veteran experience as far as in the job searches and transition. In fact, let me, I did bring a copy with me. I'd like to submit it for the record with your permission, sir. Thank you. So one of the things that came from our study is that, and this may seem like a no-brainer, but employers who actually commit to hiring veterans have a much better record of hiring and retaining veterans than those that don't. And what I mean is it's easy for a company to say they want to hire veterans, but we found the companies who truly commit to it by installing veteran-specific hiring practices, bringing on tools and interfaces on the internet that are specifically catered to veterans, and building a new culture within their companies and support systems within their companies have a much higher rate of success, especially in the retention area, than those that don't. So I'll just wrap by saying it's our belief that there is no single solution. It's already been said, right? But the problems are as diverse as the members of the veteran community that we serve. So it would be foolish of us to sit here and say that my skills translator is the only thing that's going to work. And it's foolish for anybody to say one thing. We found that it is a collaborative effort, that the work together of all these organizations here at the table today, the federal government and Congress, have brought us a long ways down the road to success in this area. But it's not time to lighten up on the pedal. There's still, again, as mentioned earlier, there's women veterans and younger men veterans, post 9/11 veterans, who are currently still suffering from lack of employment. If we were to lighten up now based on our successes, we would, through innovation and collaboration, we continue to move this forward. And when I speak about collaboration, we've worked several times with the federal government to come up with some very innovative fixes. But it's also going to require collaboration. It's going to take a lot of collaboration between all the private sector in the room too, because it can't be just done in one area. So at this point, I thank you for inviting me to speak today, and I conclude my statement, and I am open to any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Mr. Acosta, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Winstrup, Ranking Member Takano, and members of the subcommittee. DAV appreciates the opportunity to provide testimony for this hearing to outline just a few innovative and effective employment transition programs. We look forward to working with this subcommittee to ensure that the men and women who stood up for America have the tools, resources, and opportunities that they need to competitively enter the job market and secure meaningful employment. In 2014, DAV empowered America's veterans by establishing a national employment program and committed more than $800,000 to its startup so the program could begin work immediately. DAV's employment program connects transitioning active duty, Guard and Reserve members, veterans and their spouses with employers nationwide. Through our partnerships with Recruit Military and Veteran Recruiting, DAV has sponsored more than 130 all-veteran career fairs in cities nationwide, as well as 3 virtual events to connect veterans with employers who are committed to hiring them. Visitors to jobs.dav.org will find the schedule of future all-veteran career fairs. In addition, our job search database has over 250,000 employment opportunities. Our webpage, jobs.dav.org, averages about 15,000 hits per month. Since the inception of DAV's employment program, over 54,000 participants have connected with more than 7,000 exhibitors, and this has led to nearly 16,000 job offers. Outside of the DAV, another program specialized in military to civilian reintegration is a nonprofit San Diego-based National Veterans Transition Services Incorporated. NVTSI emphasizes the need to re-socialize transitioning veterans via a reverse boot camp. NVTSI's signature 3-week reboot workshops conducted across the nation are innovative, evidence-based, and intensive. A DAV member that participated in Reboot last year commented that Reboot helped ease their focus on transition from military to civilian life by providing purposeful time to make deliberate career choices and to build a strong network to create a program for life beyond the military. The third program I'll discuss is concentrated on reducing unemployment for women veterans. The nonprofit New York City-based Operation Reinvent was founded in 2013. Operation Reinvent is dedicated to resources to help transitioning military women identify career paths that suit their skills, education, goals, and interests. An Operation Reinvent workshop occurred last week at Soldier Support Centers. 50 women soldiers attended each location. The first day of the workshop was webcast to both locations in real time from CBS Studios, New York City. Nationwide webcasts in each time zone are being planned. Mr. Chairman, DAV appreciates the opportunity to provide testimony. I'd be pleased to address any questions you or members of this esteemed committee may have regarding the topics I've covered today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Call, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Winstrup, Ranking Member Takano, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify today. My name is Greg Call. I'm the head of LinkedIn's Veterans Program. LinkedIn is a professional network with over 433 million individuals around the world, 128 million in the United States, and over 2.1 million veteran and military members. LinkedIn's vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce by providing networks, insights, skills needed to succeed in the workplace. To achieve that vision, we're building the world's first economic graph, a digital map of the global economy that includes every member of the global workforce, their skills, all open jobs, all employers, and all educational institutions. In my oral remarks, I will focus on 2 things. First, I'd like to talk about my own story as a veteran and the experience that I had after leaving the Marine Corps. Second, I'll talk about LinkedIn's Veterans Program, which may be impactful for our veterans as they transition from military service to civilian professional life. I became a Marine officer in March 2008 at the age of 28. During my service in the Marine Corps, I had the privilege of leading hundreds of Marines in combat environments and on the home front. The young Marines that I led inspired me every day with their can-do attitude and their commitment to duty, service, and sacrifice. I transitioned out of the Marine Corps in 2012 after 2 deployments and over 4 years of honorable service. During this transition, it was extremely important for me to keep my mission-driven life that I loved about being a Marine officer. The Marines made me the individual that I am today. However, like many transitioning service members, I had no civilian professional identity or professional network after leaving the military. LinkedIn allowed me to reinvent myself as a veteran entrepreneur, where I founded 2 tech companies and empowered me to connect with people and organizations to support my new mission in life. In my current role, one of the projects that I led was our first annual report on veterans. Our team analyzed the professional experience, skills, and education of the 2.1 million military personnel and veterans that are members of LinkedIn, as well as veteran employer data. Among other insights, the report demonstrates that today's veterans represent in-demand talent and that more than 186,000 veterans identify themselves as executives, vice presidents, or owners on LinkedIn. We recognize that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate for Gulf War II era veterans, our youngest generation of veterans, is higher than the national rate at 5.8% versus under 5% for the general population. And the numbers for Latinos and African Americans, as well as women veterans, are higher. So there's more that we can do, and it's one of the reasons why I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you more about LinkedIn's Veterans Program. Our Veterans Program is designed to set veterans up for success in transition and close the gap between military service and civilian employment by empowering veterans to build professional identities, strong networks, civilian careers, and workplace skills. We do this by the following. 1, providing access to a network of 2.1 million military personnel and veterans on LinkedIn. 2, helping veterans build a digital professional profile or a living expression of their experience, education, and skills. 3, providing a 1-year premium service subscription to LinkedIn. And lastly, providing a 1-year subscription to lynda.com, a leading online learning platform that helps anyone learn business, technical, or creative skills. Lastly, I just want to highlight one key recommendation for the subcommittee. LinkedIn has worked with the Transition Assistance Program to assist service members with access to post-military opportunities. Among other things, we recommend a stronger integration of professional tools like LinkedIn before a service member departs from the military. Imagine if a service member had built an online civilian profile, has support from mentors, and access to our network while in service. They would be better positioned to identify skills gaps and to connect with recruiters long before they transition from the military, and would be set up for success in their post-military career. We at LinkedIn stand ready to work with Congress to expand opportunity for every veteran in the United States. This is our duty, our mandate, and fundamentally tied to our mission and vision at LinkedIn. Thank you.
Well, I thank you all for your remarks, and I'm now going to yield myself 5 minutes for some questions. But first, I'd like to make some comments. I really do appreciate the testimonies that we have heard here today, and I'd like to comment on them, if I may, from this position. You know, Mr. Eversole, I think you brought up a good point. You know, many of our young veterans, as they get out, use their GI Bill, and many of them go and use it for a 4-year degree, and that's great. But that's not for everybody. And I'm concerned in this country, we've made that too much of the standard that the American dream doesn't exist unless you get a 4-year degree, and I would disagree. Neither of my parents have a 4-year degree, and my guess is yours might not either. And what we can accomplish through work and the opportunity to grow isn't always for everyone to get a 4-year degree. So I appreciate what you had to say on that. And Secretary Michaud, I appreciate the work that you've done with vets.gov. I think it's come a long way, and certainly an opportunity for so many. And I appreciate the reaching out to faith-based organizations. You know, these are people operating really outside of religious beliefs, but as Americans trying to make things better for fellow Americans. And that's greatly appreciated. Mr. Howell, I want to comment on the importance of the public-private partnerships that we have to engage in, because we're going from basically being public to private, and that transition should include both sides. And Mr. Goss, I appreciate the work on transition. As a veteran, I have a little bit of concern with the word reboot. As a veteran, I don't feel like I needed to be rebooted, but I felt that, because I'm concerned that that name by itself may detract somewhat from the decision that our young men and women are making to serve their country. And as though they needed to be rebooted, I think they need to be the transition. So that's one comment I make, but appreciate the work that you're doing on that. And that leads to what you had to say, Mr. Call, which was, you know, you're mission-driven. And that's what you want to continue to do. And I appreciate the opportunities for people to have a place to go to establish a mission and to drive that mission onward. So I think this has been very good testimony today from all of you, and I appreciate it. To questioning, what is the number one thing that this subcommittee could do to improve opportunities for veteran job seekers? Looking at us, what we can do, and I'd be glad to go down the line if we can. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know both you and Ranking Member had talked about the women veterans issue and how it's, you compared it with the men's issue. And here's, first a comment on that and what the committee might be able to do to help that. If you look at the chart comparing, women veterans to the female non-veterans, you can see in that chart that actually the female veterans number is lower than the non-female veterans. I asked my staff, how can we analyze what's happening with the women's veterans population? Number one, the women veterans tend to be younger, and they're more likely to be of minority status. At the same time, they're more likely to be enrolled in school while seeking employment than their male veterans counterparts. And when you look at the male veterans counterpart, the bulk of the unemployment is actually in the higher age limit. So it's, you really can't compare women veterans with male veterans. But when you compare women veterans in the same category as non-female veterans, you'll see that actually they're doing extremely well. One area where actually Congress can, and it's one area that my staff had highlighted, is because of the, at the time that Title 38 was passed into law, was written, there were fewer women veterans at that time. And right now, when you look at the definitions, it's different in different statutes. What would be very helpful if you did a thorough analysis of Title 38 and actually bring into sync the definition of women veterans. That would be very helpful as far as helping us out over at the Department of Labor vets. Whether Congress does it or CRS does it, that would be extremely helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that one of the things that's absolutely critical is that we don't lose sight of the fact that there are veterans and military spouses who continue to struggle. Even though the unemployment rate has been cut in half over the last 5 years for most segments of the military population, we can't just wipe our hands and say that we can declare victory. We have a lot more work that needs to be done. And I think this issue, the issue of finding and helping service members and veterans find meaningful employment opportunities, is really one of national security. Because as we look and have to, at some point in the future, continue to have an all-volunteer force, we need young men and women who are willing to raise their right hand for the promise that it's going to somehow lead to better economic opportunities. And if we can't deliver that as a country, then that next time that we need to make that call, it may be more difficult for our services to find those young men and women who are willing to raise their right hand. So from a national security perspective, But it's also, from a business organization, it's absolutely critical that we take these talented young men and women and make sure that they have meaningful opportunities. It's absolutely critical for America's workforce that these highly motivated, highly skilled, highly trainable young men and women are that next generation of leaders in those companies. And we've certainly seen from the business community that there is a groundswell of support and really a fight to find those young men and women. But hearings like this and continue to focus on these issues is absolutely critical in the near future.
Thank you for the question. I think that, first of all, so much of what your committees have done and are working towards have been effective. And so I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the VOW Act and some of these other things have had an impact. Recently, I've been speaking with employers who, when we opened it up to was it 2020, the VOW Act, or the coverage for the tax incentives, that created another round of excitement towards this. I know that's maybe not the right word, but the idea is that so many companies had been kind of thinking, well, this is going to go away, so I'm not going to invest in it because of that. But now that there's a longer road to this, it's starting to get a lot more interest with employers. So I want to encourage, continuing those kind of programs and incentives and looking for new ways to try to incentivize it. At the same time, I know that can backfire and become another entitlement issue that we don't want to get into. But I think off the top, that's one of the things that I would continue to pursue. The other thing is, and I know we haven't talked much about it, but when a service member transitions out of the military, typically, let's pick an E5, they're going to be stepping out from a situation where they have housing and everything covered, typically a single income at the E5 level. When they step out, it's very difficult to step right back into that E5 pay level, plus all of a sudden they have the weight of the economy on them, the cost of housing and all these sort of things. We have to keep in mind that there's two people that transition, if not more, when it comes to military family, and it's the spouse employment issues that we should also be considering. I know that it's not necessarily a veteran's issue, but when it comes to impacting a veteran's quality of life and their opportunities, looking out for the spouse as they transition, I think, would be an important factor to consider moving forward. Otherwise, like I said, the biggest issues we've seen veterans talk about are and more so we're trying to listen more to the employers, is a lack of understanding of what the military service member brings to their company, a lack of understanding exactly the incentives for why they'd want to hire them. And we're working very hard to create a curriculum to help bring employers up to speed on how to hire veterans, how to retain veterans, and by using the best practices that we've learned from organizations or companies like Verizon, who are doing a fantastic job of hiring and retaining veterans, looking at what they're doing and then trying to teach that to other employers. I don't know how that impacts legislation, but I thought I should share that while I had the opportunity. Thank you.
Chairman Winstrip, DAV members at our last convention affirmed DAV Resolution Number 136, which calls on Congress to work with the Department of Labor, the Department of Defense, and track the results and status of people that go through the Transition Assistance Program, the Transition GPS, and to make any changes based on what they may see on that data.
Mr. Call.
When I get the opportunity to mentor, service members that are thinking about transitioning out, I always use the analogy of, in the military, you don't learn how to fly an F-18 the day before you're stepping into that cockpit in an F-18. And so don't learn how to develop a professional identity and develop a professional network that you're going to have to leverage when you're transitioning, right when you're going to transition. Do it much earlier than that. So anything we can do to drive awareness and promote a lot of the programs you're hearing about today a lot earlier in the service member's life cycle, in their career, I think will be hugely beneficial to them as they transition out of the military.
Well, thank you all, and I thank my colleagues for obliging me going over a little in time. I'll be glad to extend the same to each one of you. Mr. Takano, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Secretary Michaud, Assistant Secretary Michaud. You've certainly hit the ground running in your new role as head of DOL Vets, and we're always pleased to see you back before this subcommittee or committee. And congratulations to the team you've assembled in such a short time and we truly appreciate your testimony today. Veteran employment rates are low overall, but one of our priorities today is to look a little closer at the higher unemployment rate for women veterans. And as you know, I am sponsoring a bill to study the Transition Assistance Program, which, if passed, will take a look at whether TAP can be improved to meet the needs of women veterans, disabled veterans, and insular veterans. In your opinion, what are the main reasons for the lower employment rate for women veterans?
If you look at I think the lower unemployment rate for female veterans versus the non-female veterans population, if you look at that same category, it is a combination of all the efforts collaboratively done by, both public, private, sectors to bring that unemployment rate down. As far as the TAP, we are constantly reviewing the TAP curriculum. As far as how effective it is, I was actually asked before I came in here, the VOW Act, has that been effective? How can you quantify that? It's very hard to quantify because of the VOW Act, because there's so much being done, both at the local, state, and federal level, to say this is what really caused it to drop. All I can say, if you look at the charts that I've given you, those 3 charts, the VOW Act was passed in 2011. It was into the TAP curriculum in 2013, and you can see how the numbers have been going. So whether it's all because of the VOW Act, it's pretty hard to say. I has been made several comments about trying to help service members early in their transition. That is an issue, and we actually established and implemented a senior sergeant major professional military education. We have a full-time sergeant major that works over at the Department of Labor Vets that actually helps us with the sergeant majors. My Deputy Assistant Secretary, Terry Gerton, and Sergeant Major Coleman actually spoke at the Sergeant Majors Academy to really impress upon them the importance of trying to get those that are in the military as soon as they're sworn in into an American Job Center so they can start that process early on. The other issue that we dealt with that actually dealt with that same information is the Veterans Data Exchange Initiative. This is the first of its kind MOU that I signed early this year with the Department of Defense to actually get the information from those members who are in the military. We're getting 10 years worth of information and on. So we can actually better analyze what's happening in the military as they go through. So we can actually establish policies that will help them as they get ready to transition out of the military.
So you're looking at other ways to gather data and information. On a slightly different topic related to women veterans, and this is not so much the unemployment rate, so it's interesting that they have a lower unemployment rate for women veterans, but we know that women veterans don't access their benefits as much as other veterans. Maybe they're going to work instead. Maybe they're taking up the chairman's notion that you don't go to school, but you go into work. And maybe that's what's happening with our women veterans. But we have a suspicion that might also have to do with the fact that they don't identify, they're reluctant to identify themselves as veterans. Can you shed any light on whether it's a reluctance to identify, whether they're going into the workforce? Why is it that they're not accessing their benefits as much as the male veterans?
This is speculation. Actually, when Judge Russell came to speak before this committee a number of years when I was on the committee, when he asked the audience how many were veterans, hands went up. When they rephrased the question, how many years served in the military, more hands went up. And the issue is some veterans, whether it's male or female, they don't self-identify themselves as veterans because of different reasons. And within our female veterans population, it's more problematic than in the male population as far as self-identifying whether they're veterans. One of the things I stress as I go around the country into the American Job Centers, I'm asking them, rather than ask if you're a veteran, ask them whether or not they served in the military. That will actually, I believe, will help us identify those who served, whether it's male or female. This depends on how you phrase the question on what the response you're going to get.
Well, along those lines, let's turn to the American Job Centers. Do you feel that the DVOPs and the LVRs at the American Job Centers are adequately trained to help employers understand the unique and positive aspects of recruiting and hiring women veterans?
Absolutely. Our focus is on all veterans, women veterans of all different ages. The DevOps and leavers have done a tremendous job. I'm very proud of them. And with veterans.gov that we initiated, there is a site. If you click on the site, Hire a Veteran, you go to the next page, your one-on-one service, and if an employer needs X amount of employees in a certain category, they get a response back within 1 day. 1 day, they'll get a response back from our leavers of what's out there. I'm very proud of the customer service that we're able to provide for the employers that actually call Department of Labor Vets or go to our veterans.gov website.
Just one more question, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Call, I want to thank you for spending a little time with me yesterday afternoon, and I certainly want to thank you for your service as a Marine, and thank all the gentlemen who have served our country, all of you. You know, the chairman and I have often, you know, did a lot of work on examining the TAP process and how effective the Transition Assistance Program is in helping our veterans transition. Veterans often say that a TAP refresher after 6 months from separating from the military is beneficial to them. And one of the problems with this is that unless they've applied for benefits, the VA doesn't necessarily know where all the separated service members are. Are there ways that LinkedIn might work with DOL and the VA to inform veterans on how to reconnect with TAP resources and or Soldier for Life personnel?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Congressman. Like many of the gentlemen have already said up here, you know, our program at LinkedIn, we don't look at it as the only solution. We look at it as part of the solution with a lot of the programs that have been mentioned today. So we are always looking for ways to collaborate and to partner with any organization that has the best interests of the veteran community at heart. We do have a very solid community, a very engaged veteran community on LinkedIn, and it would be, you know, a privilege of ours to be able to promote other programs that are highly beneficial to that community.
Well, and specifically, you know, it seems to me that the VA, Assistant Secretary Michaud could really use your help in identifying and making known things like the TAP refresher course, because my experience is service members are in such a hurry to get out. There's such a lot of information coming in, and then only after they've been out for a while do they realize, oh, you know, I don't really know all the service. I didn't even know that was available, and or, you know, this program or that program. But it seems to me that since you have such an extensive network through LinkedIn, that this might be a way for us to reach those veterans and identify them.
Yes, and we've been in touch with the Secretary's team. They've been wonderful to work with. And we look forward to broadening that collaboration moving forward in the future, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my questions.
Ms. Rice, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Michaud, is it Secretary, right? Or Assistant Secretary? I'm trying to give you a promotion. Sorry about that. Speaking of him, you know, we were talking about the rate of employment among women veterans versus the greater veteran population. I have had conversations with Secretary Perez in the past on the opportunities that apprenticeships offer for women and minorities, and I wonder how you think we can encourage more women veterans to seek out apprenticeships.
That's a very good question, Congresswoman. And that's one area that, as I go around talking with businesses, whether talking with the garrison commanders on the different bases I attend, apprenticeship is an important tool. It's a tool that, thanks to Congress, actually they have $90 million more on apprenticeship. We've been aggressively promoting apprenticeship among the business community, among the VSOs, and looking at the gaps, the skill gaps that are currently out there and how we can fill those particular skill gaps in establishing an apprenticeship program, if there's not one available, and look at the issues when you look at women veterans populations is to fill the skill needs. It's a very important tool.
Great. I obviously couldn't agree more. Mr. Call, I want to thank you for coming and meeting with me this morning. You definitely did your homework by meeting with members of the committee. I think that's very helpful to us to get to know all of you and exactly what you're doing. So you had mentioned this morning, you discussed your meeting with the Department of Defense Secretary Ash Carter. And you said that during that meeting that he suggested that service members should set up their LinkedIn profiles earlier on in their military careers when they're active, so that they have fully developed online, they have a fully developed online presence and professional network, or at least time to build a professional network by the time they are transitioning. So can you just tell the committee what your plans, what LinkedIn's plans are with DOD, the VA, DOL vets, to start encouraging service members to do that?
Yeah, sure. And just a quick clarification on that meeting. We were very honored to have Secretary Carter come to LinkedIn. It was a great meeting with him and all of his team. And that was one of the topics that definitely was discussed during that meeting. I'm not positive if Secretary Carter initiated that conversation, but it was something that was discussed for sure.
Well, then I'll give the credit to you, since he's not here.
But yes, so we've actually created, I mentioned lynda.com, the online learning platform that we now offer a 1-year free subscription to service members and veterans that are members of LinkedIn to. We actually created a course called LinkedIn for Veterans. And the course was intended to remove the barrier to really trying to figure out a way to establish a professional identity and professional network so that you could connect to opportunity. So it takes you from A to Z and gives you excellent demonstrations and practical application that you can do on the platform in a real interactive way, so that integrating that course into a service member's training earlier on in their life cycle can be hugely beneficial for them to both understand why they should be on LinkedIn, but also how to utilize it.
Let me just say that I just want to acknowledge LinkedIn. I mean, there are a lot of, we talked today about companies that talk about hiring or trying to convince the private sector about how important it is to hire. And you are a perfect example, Mr. Call, in my opinion, of the benefits that companies get by hiring someone like you who you don't forget the men and women that you served with, and you come back into the private sector and you're doing everything that you can to help them. So I want to thank LinkedIn for giving opportunities to great Americans like you who have served our country and deserve an opportunity to put all the wonderful skills that they have to use, not just for their own professional benefit, but for those of their fellow colleagues as well. So thank you. And I have just one more question, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Long Island, where I am, Mr. Howell, has a large population of World War II, Korea and Vietnam vets. Now, just because I'm curious, how do you attract older veterans who might be less comfortable using, the new technology? I mean, when I try to explain to kids when I was a DA that when I was growing up, there was one phone in the house and it was attached to a wall, they look at me like I'm a Martian. So how do you do your best to bring that generation of veterans into this universe?
It's a very good question, and I got to tell you that, surprisingly, that's our most active group. Vietnam era and backwards are the most active group on military.com as far as commenting on articles, engaging with one another. They seem unstoppable at some point. It's impressive. I think that there are programs where, because obviously we're finding just a snippet of that population, because there are quite a few who are technology, phobic, so to speak. But I think that what we've done in our areas, and I think other opportunities for others to draw them in are through organizations like, there's an organization in Oregon right now who's actively going out and interviewing and filming World War II veterans and Korea War veterans, getting their stories before they pass. And I know that the Legion has a program like that, but I'm working directly with the foundation right now in Oregon where we're gathering these stories and trying to build an archive. They're actually building curriculum around those veteran stories so that their stories aren't forgotten. So as we do that, then if we can't get them to come to the site, at least we can get them on the site as far as their presence and their experience. But like I said, as a whole, we don't suffer from having a lack of interaction with our older veterans. So.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McNerney, you're now recognized.
Well, I thank the chairman for holding this hearing, and I just want to say how impressive the results have been. It wasn't that long ago that it looked like veteran unemployment was going through the roof, and now it seems to be controlled at least, and maybe continuing to move in a good direction. So you all deserve a lot of credit for that, and a lot of other people do too. Mr. Michaud, I've heard that some states are experiencing a problem with the timing on the money they received for the jobs for veteran state grants, or the JVSC funding, which pays for the DVOPs and the LVERs, who serve veterans out of American Job Centers. We hear that many states are hiring fewer of these DVOPs and LVERs in anticipation of delayed funding. Have you heard about these concerns, and do you have any thoughts on how we can better ensure that this funding is provided so as not to cause disruption on the hiring?
Thank you very much, Congressman, for that question. As I go around the country and meet with state workforce agencies, with Veteran Service Organization, others, the issue that comes up when we talk about jobs for veterans state grants, actually it's two issues. The first issue, the state wants flexibility, as particularly rural states, as it relates to leavers and DVOPs. I was able to actually provide that flexibility about a month ago to allow them to better manage leave-ops and DVERs. The second issue, the one that you had asked me about, constantly comes up in every state, whether it's a large state like California or Texas, or a small state like Maine or Massachusetts or other small states. The funding is an issue, and it's a timing issue. DVOPs and leavers, and that's our biggest funding program, money goes directly back to the states. And when Congress doesn't pass a budget on time, that causes concerns for the states. And some of the solutions that, actually that has come up when I talk to folks is how can we close that gap? Because what's happening with some states is they're not hiring DVOPs or leavers because not knowing whether Congress will provide the funding or when it provides it. And the solutions that some states have proposed is to either put the JVSG program similar to other DOL programs like the Wagner-Pisa on a program year. That's one option. Another option that has come up is dealing with advance appropriation. For a state like California, for instance, California receives $19 million for JVSG funding, and if they do not get the funding on time, on a monthly basis, I believe it's probably a little over $1.5 million. So it is an issue. When I was in Colorado, actually had a roundtable discussion with Congressman Lamborn. That issue came up in Colorado as well, and I know Congressman Lamborn was going to look into it. So it is an issue.
Well, thank you.
And we'll look forward to working with the committee to help
To find solutions.
find a
Good.
solution.
Mr. Howland, Mr. Acosta, a few years ago, I think there was a feeling that some of the veterans were feeling discriminated against because of concerns about post-traumatic stress and other sorts of stigmas. Is that a problem, or is that more or less dissipated? And if not, what can we do about that together?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. PTSD, of course, is a prevalent problem among an issue among veterans, wounded and ill veterans, disabled veterans especially. Those veterans are focused on and looked at the VA healthcare system, and they're treated there. As far as their needs, we can assess their needs when they come in and talk to us, and determine what is best going to be the outcome for them, and what kind of resources we can shed light on for them.
But are employers sort of stigmatizing and maybe discriminating against veterans for that sort of fear of that sort of problem?
That was a concern we had, pardon me for jumping in here, thank you for the question. That was a concern that we had a number of years ago, as, you know, especially when we kind of peaked on the unemployment. and we worked with DAV and other organizations to get a lot of content, a lot of information out there to try to destigmatize that, to kind of put it in real terms that it isn't a danger that an employer has to necessarily prepare for or plan for or be aware of. And I think that over time that we've seen that conversation wane with our discussions with employers. It doesn't seem to be, the forefront of their concerns like it may have been a few years ago. So while I don't think there's an active thing we could do, it's just a matter of just keeping it out on the open and talking about it and kind of taking the stigma away from it in our conversations, both here and outside.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious as to maybe on that very topic that Mr. McNary brought up, that maybe employment and a sense of purpose reduces some of the symptoms of PTSD that we find. That it may change the dynamic and actually be helping rather than being a concern. And anecdotally, at least, that may be the case, and hopefully that is the case, and we can continue that. Before we close, I ask unanimous consent that LinkedIn's annual Veterans Insights Report be included in today's hearing record. Hearing no objection, so ordered. And I want to thank you all for your testimony today. I think this was an outstanding hearing, and I appreciate your thoughtful responses to our questions today. I appreciate everything that each of you is doing to connect veterans to meaningful jobs as they exit the military. All your hard work is paying off as the national unemployment rate among veterans continues to decrease. As was said earlier, and I think we'd all agree that we as a country still have more work to do to ensure that all the men and women who have served this nation and won a meaningful career after uniform are able to do so. So I look forward to our continued partnership going forward, and I hope that all levels of government and the private sector also continue to collaborate to give back to veteran job seekers across this country. Finally, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material on today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. The hearing is now adjourned.